Hello, and thank you for listening to AI SuccessFactors podcast. We help enterprise adopt artificial intelligence. This is Samuel Matthew, your host. In simple terms, AI adoption is a three-step process: identifying the right AI opportunity, tying it back to a business value, and align it to a business goal. If you're a leader, needs help demonstrating ROI on your existing AI initiatives, or want to get a buy-in for a new AI initiative, you are in the right place. Our mission is to empower enterprise leaders to navigate, transform, and lead by applying AI into their business. In this show, we interview analytical and business leaders who successfully implemented AI into their business. In the conversations we feature, you will learn how these companies reach strategic business goals. It's a pleasure and privilege for our listeners to develop a point of view from the insights shared in this podcast. Hey Nimesh, welcome to AI SuccessFactors podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to talk about AI, the biggest topic, I think, in everybody's mind.
Nimesh, one of the most fascinating shifts is how generative AI is redefining the collaboration between human and machines. We're moving towards a future where tech teams don't just use AI, they work alongside it. The evolution is emerging through two distinct models. One is a factory pattern, where utilizing the autonomous Gen AI agents for routine, predictable tasks such as log monitoring and legacy code migration, those kind of work. And there is another avenue where these Gen AI tools are employed to augment human expertise in a very complex, judgment-intensive activities like enterprise technology cost management. So all this means these changes are redefining the workforce dynamics here. So some see it as a threat, others see it as an opportunity. How should leaders balance the fear with the need for innovation?
I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of the word fear. There is a lot of fear, and fear is an interesting concept. Fear really is a response for our mind and body when it is in danger. That's usually the intense word of the word fear. But you and me, we take risks all day, right? We take risks crossing the street. We take risks getting in the car. Yet we're not fearful of that, right? So overcoming fear means we have to have a premium that's greater than the risk we're willing to take. And I think AI is also the same thing. People are fearful until it gives them more than what they are prepared to pay for it, in terms of not just investment, but just the risk that they take. And when you think about the absence of fear, right, that's when you underestimate a risk. Right? You cross the road and you don't look. Right? That's underestimating it. But I think as we think forward with leaders, I think being uncomfortable is the best place between fearful and successful. And what I will leave you with is innovation happens at the intersection of fear and bravery.
So when it becomes more embedded, companies may restructure teams to balance human and AI contributions effectively. This could involve redefining roles and creating new positions focused on AI oversight and strategy. How is it going to change the workforce dynamics?
I think when we think about AI and work, we need to break AI down into pieces, because when people talk about AI, they're usually only thinking about generative AI, right? That's on top of mind, ChatGPT, whatever it may be. It's the generative AI section. But really, AI is the first round is predictive analytics. The second one is machine learning. The third one is deep learning. And the fourth one is what we call generative AI, right? So if we break it down, we have to separate three things: a work, the job, and the skill. Work is effort, right? Any effort you put into something is work, right? Force equals mass times acceleration, work. However you want to define work. Gardening is work. Cooking is work. But job is something that we do in exchange for pay. And skills is something we bring to the table to get that pay. Right? So now let's fast forward and think. I think jobs are shifting to the right, where it's more value-added work versus mundane tasks. That's where we're shifting towards this. Think about the world of bank tellers pre-ATM versus now. Think about the world of farming before the tractors came in. It's not less or more jobs, it's different jobs today than it was before. And the skills that humans are learning is how to use AI, right? That's the skills that you'll have to bring into the table. Over time, the workforce is going to expect a certain amount of AI to be present in their jobs, right? Nobody comes to work today saying, well, if I go to work, I won't have the internet, right? That thought doesn't even come into your mind. However, you don't think about that with AI, but you're going to have to think about it in the same way. So as an employer, you won't have people if you've got mundane tasks. And as an employee, you won't be paid and you won't have a job if you can't use AI. So it's not about people losing their jobs to AI as the workforce of the future. I think people won't have roles if they don't know how to use AI.
In relation to that, if you look in all the projections from the top management consulting firms, according to their projections, Gen AI could automate tasks up to 30% of hours worked across the US economy. How can business strike a right balance between automation and human-centric roles?
You raise a point of human-centric, right? Every time we talk about AI, we sort of compare them to humans, right? That's kind of where our mind goes first. I had a really interesting conversation with a race car driver recently, right? And they use a ton of AI when it comes to getting data from the cars, manipulating that data in seconds and giving feedback to the driver exactly what they need to do. This is happening today, right? So that's the ways where AI is actually working. But you know what the driver said to me? AI will tell you exactly what you do and what you should not do. And the human will push that car just past that boundary, right? AI will tell you, you got to do this, otherwise you're going to hit the wall. And the AI will tell you what you should not do. Like, don't do this and don't do that. However, the human knows just enough to push that boundary so they don't hit the wall and they'll go beyond what it is, because that's what it takes to win. So that's the differences. The human can actually push the boundaries that AI is not willing to push. The second thing I would say when you think about human-centric behavior is, as humans, we've evolved, right? We've evolved to say when humans make a mistake, we forgive people. When AI makes a mistake, I'm not sure we're there. Forgiveness is not a part of the conversation, right? So that's a very human behavior, is forgiveness. That's not a part of AI behavior as yet. And finally, human judgment is really required to maximize AI's capabilities, right? Let me give you an example. Lawyers, can spend a lot of time looking at documents today, but AI can summarize those documents really quickly and take away the task of looking at those documents. However, to be a lawyer, you have to be able to read between the lines and be able to understand something that hasn't happened as a precedent that's set before. That's something that AI cannot do. So I think they have to draw a boundary of what it is that AI can help you with versus what humans bring to the table that AI cannot. And the biggest one is empathy.
That's a great point. In our offline conversations, you were referring about organizations architecting the future versus evolving it. I have heard different way people putting it together. For the benefit of the listeners, can you elaborate your thought process around it?
Absolutely. First of all, I'd say that the employee base in most organizations is ready for AI. However, I'm not sure the leadership is moving fast enough. You talked about McKinsey right now. I mean, I read that McKinsey is saying that there will be a 4.4, I believe, trillion dollar market of productivity that AI will bring to the table. 4.4 trillion. Right. That's more than the drug trade, right? That's a lot. So AI will become our new drug. But what I believe is AI is where the leadership has become where they're looking for a solution, right? Without really understanding and defining the problem. So it's a solution looking for a problem right now. And that's why people are taking it really slow. So just like everything else, we have to figure out what problems an AI can solve. And as we try to do this, if we architect our way, we're clearly defining the problems that AI can solve in an organization, just like any other technology. And if we let it evolve, we'll have AI create the problems that it'll find solutions for. And that's the evolution of AI that you probably don't want in your organization. So you're better off getting in front of it and getting people, for example, to use it than to stop it. Because you're not going to be able to stop this race. I mean, the train has already left the station. So that's what I mean when I say architected for the future, developed a clear understanding, mindset, and almost like a guiding principles of how you're going to utilize AI in your organization. And every organization is going to be different versus figuring out back end what AI is automatically doing and then trying to fit it into your organization. That's evolution.
Nimesh, CXOs like you, when these kind of transformative technology come in, how you deal with it in terms of how you seize it, how you act on it. I've heard people saying, we'll look in what are the processes within the organization going obsolete, what are the processes that need automation. People look in different dimensions when they incorporate AI into their organizations or any transformative technology to the organizations. So what is your perspective on that?
I think we can't think of AI like magic. AI is not magic, right? AI is super advanced math at the end of the day. And there are some basics that you have to be able to do in order to incorporate AI into your organization. I mean, the first one, when you talk about business processes, well, you have to understand how your business functions and what your core processes are. You can't expect AI to figure that out for you. Right? That's something you're going to have to do. There's hard work humans have to do regardless of AI or not.
Right.
Second is leaders have to play what I call this role of devil's advocate. Right? If you want to be able to use AI, because you still don't know exactly what it's going to do. So you got to play devil's advocate because everybody's excited. So you got to lay out all the advantages that AI can offer to your organization. Then you got to take a step back and you have to say, put on your risk lens and see what it's going to do and what the side effects might be. Then you ask yourself, what if? When I say what if AI were to do this task? And what if AI were not to do this task? What is going to be the differences there? And finally, you have to balance where we started this conversation, fear and this hope of irrational success. Because I think still there is a hope of irrational success in most leadership minds, and it slows them down from taking the first step because the hope is to go from A to Q without going from B, C, D and across the alphabet, right? So I think there's that process that needs to take place. And finally, as an organization, you can't forget the importance of the good and bad of AI, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. And that's a whole other podcast conversation to have.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Very important topic.
Another thing that we need to touch upon is the IT architecture. Currently, these organizations set up the IT architecture for a different outcome. But now if you look in, they need to adapt their systems to accommodate AI capabilities, ensuring scalability, security, like as you mentioned, and efficiency. But large portion of the enterprise aren't there, as you all know. So how companies that haven't invested heavily in the digital infrastructure so far can use AI to bypass traditional transformation stages?
I think a lot of organizations, especially older ones, I mean, my organization is 176 years old, right? Their system's older than me out there. But over time, most organizations, I hope, have taken the step of decomposing the architecture, right? Breaking it down into manageable pieces in order to be, everybody used to call it future proofing. And this has come in stages of services oriented architecture, microservices, you name it. There's been lots of different API, whatever you want to call it. It's the flavor of the month coffee club, right? But it's a really important concept in architecture is to be able to understand the pieces where AI can be applied and how it can be applied to your organization. AI is not going to replace all your systems. It's going to replace certain things that your applications do today. And unless your application is built in a composable structure, it's going to be very hard for people to replace those pieces. Right. So as we move forward, what I leave your listeners with is you're going to have to move from being pure software developers to becoming master integrators. And integration of AI into your applications is going to be more important than just building the AI.
Another aspects of adoption where CCO deals with AI investments, altering the cost dynamics, potentially reducing the expenses in areas like manual coding and maintenance, while increasing the investments in AI infrastructure and talent development. what are the framework that leaders can adopt to balance strategic AI investment in an unpredictable innovation space?
In most organizations, AI is first sort of looked at by the technology department, right? Because it is kind of technology at the end of the day. There's advanced tech behind all of this. So the entry into most organizations is through the tech space. So I ask our company and other organizations to take a kind of a three-pronged approach to AI because it is still nascent when it comes to what its potential is into the future. So the first one is, how can you use AI internally for technology, right? The tech team, I say, has to eat their own dog food first. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to deploy it. The second is, how can we take AI to internally facing things within the organization to make them more productive? And the third one, once we get satisfied whether we can do that, is exposing AI to our customers. In that order, because I believe if you start exposing AI to our customers, we've seen this multiple times. You have bias, you've got all kinds of things that happen from an AI perspective that you haven't learned about first. So our first step is, okay, you've got, how do you code for vulnerabilities? How do you code? How do you do test case production? How do you do all of those pieces for AI? The second piece is, what can you take from AI and start making those mundane tasks and repeatable tasks being processed by AI? So the human is doing the last mile, not the first mile, right? You still need to have a human in the loop because you don't want agents making decisions, especially on risky things. And then the third one is exposing AI to your customers and being able to use AI as you scale organizations. And I want to make sure I'm saying that very carefully. It's not in lieu of humans. It's in addition to humans.
We touched on this at the beginning of the podcast, the human-centric nature. I wanted to touch upon a different dimension to it, the integration of AI into the workflows and processes, as we discussed, that necessitates a harmonious relationship between human intuition and AI data-driven logic. That's something sees to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Leaders must cultivate an environment where both can complement each other because it's all about right decision-making processes, right? So one side of it, this machine is giving you the data-driven logic. On the other side, human intuition, what to take, what not to take. Where do you draw the line in a practical business scenarios?
Yeah, I think with AI, as an organization, you need to fully appreciate and understand what it can and cannot do. And right now, most organizations are doing that from what it can do with technology and what it cannot do with technology, right? That's kind of where the boundary is being drawn. I think there needs to be a new boundary, right? And the new boundary is what AI cannot do is empathy, as I pointed out. And AI has no moral compass, right? So emotion is the boundary which is critical to decision making because sometimes the best decisions are not the most rational ones. I gave you the example of the car. Rationally, the guy shouldn't have sped up and turned. But the best decision they could have made was actually speeding up and turning, right? So it's going beyond what the data is telling you. And human evolution has taken place because we do more than what the data tells us or what the environment is telling us around that. And there are only humans that can do things and creatively imagine what does not exist. AI will tell you all combinations of forms of things that exist. Only humans can imagine what doesn't exist today. So as we look forward, I think drawing that boundary between technological expertise and human intuition, empathy, and decision-making expertise is a way to look at a new boundary between AI and human connectivity.
Nimesh, we are at the top of the hour. Before we wrap up, what is your advice to leaders dealing with the shift in cost allocation, especially with the investments in AI capabilities?
3 things. If you're a leader in an organization, number 1, your people are ready. You need to move faster. Okay. Number 2, AI is a bet. And if you want to play to win versus playing not to lose, you've got to be able to place a bet, which means you have to make an investment that's not peanut butter spreading. You have to know where you're going to place your bets. So you need to understand that. And the third thing is, don't expect an immediate result. Expect to fail and fail and fail. If you try 10 things, only 8 things might work, or 2 things might work. So going back again, 3 things: be prepared because your teams are ready. You may not be. Secondly, place a bet in your business with AI because you got to play to win versus not to lose. And the third one is learn to fail. You're not going to see immediate results.
That's a great take. To effectively navigate the disruption caused by AI and leverage it for business transformation, leaders should think it through a framework. The first and foremost thing is to assess the impact of AI on your business model. That include identify which parts of the business are at risk of disruption, determine which processes and workflows to be automated, and access how AI can create a new revenue streams like how Netflix did. They cannibalize their own cash cow for a new business model. So those are the things leaders can look in. And once if they have identified and assessed, then the next step is to develop a strategic AI roadmap, which is clearly defining your objective and how they align with your overall business goal. That alignment need to be done and prioritize the areas where AI have most significant impact, where your first dollars go for these initiatives, and then followed by building the capabilities and expertise. That means building infrastructure and helping employees upskilling and enabling them to use AI, and so on. Then comes to other practical implementation and governance. I'm sure our audience is largely benefited out of this great conversation. Thank you so much, Nimesh. And thank you for sharing your insights and experience. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious and keep pushing the boundaries of what AI can achieve. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
If you like today's podcast, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. Your feedback is important. We always look for comments and recommendations to improve. This show is available on Apple Podcast, Google, and SoundCloud. Please do subscribe. Plus, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. You can find the links to these pages in the show notes or by visiting us at AISuccessFactors.com. We publish episodes bi-weekly on Wednesdays. Please be sure to tune in for the next episode. Thank you and see you next time.